So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our lovely Learnsignal SBL June 2024 pre-scene analysis of the pre-scene information. My name is James Wright. You are welcome to keep in touch with me after today's webinar. If you have LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, you put in James Wright ACCA. I would love to hear how you get on in your SBL exam, and I'll be also posting some tips in the meantime to help you get over the line ahead of your exam. So make sure you write it down. If you've got your phone on you at the moment, feel free to search. And myself and the Learnsignal team would love to keep in contact to see how you get on. So for today's session, I'm going to try and provide, what are we talking about? Will provide as much value as I possibly can, giving you a nice little overview to start off with, telling you about the company, the environment, the overall industry. This is being recorded, so don't feel like if you've missed anything, oh my word, James, how am I going to cope? But if I was you, starting from the start, you have the contents page. Break up your notes on there. This is where, if I was in your shoes, come the exam day, you've got to have some mechanism in the run-up to this exam to break up your notes. And if it was me, I would be saying, I'm going to have an Excel slide or Excel tab, shall I say, or a piece of paper for introduction, one for the services, and one for Praecuro Vet Services Limited. And then you can see the little subheadings on there. This is all taken directly from those pre-scene materials. Actually, laying out your notes, putting them on maybe flashcards, something on those lines that's going to help you remember the pre-scene information, because trust me on this, time management is one of the reasons why students fail the SBL exam, and you need to work out a technique that works best for you. And if it was me, I'd break it up section by section so that I could then rewrite it out in my own sort of little buzzwords or little things that are really important. And that is what is going to make the difference to help you remember it, because you haven't got time in the exam to be going back and saying to yourself, oh, was it in this section or whatever on there? There are some key areas to the SBL exam that some students just overlook on there. We have agency theory, stakeholder theory, and CSR, corporate social responsibility. All are commonly tested or embedded within the SBL exam that you can refer to. Agency theory we'll be coming on to later, where we've been given a situation with a set of board of directors who are centrally controlling the way that this business is actually being operated, hence why that is a possibility on there. Stakeholder theory, it does what it says on the tin. Internal and external stakeholders to Praecuro Vet Services will be on your exam in one way or another. You've got to identify them and then link it to some theory and the requirement that is being set. And last but not least, CSR. There are environmental factors, social factors on there. All the way throughout, we have staff turnover being particularly high. The way that the business operates is having a negative impact on the human side of the way that operations are run. And we've been given actual sort of insight to say, well, this is something that could impact on the veterinary side of it. So all three areas I would definitely be having in my arsenal going into your SBL exam, that you've got to be able to deploy them and link them to the theories as well in the SBL syllabus. Straight away into the introduction now, we've got PVS, which I'll refer to them as in this webinar, and you should in the exam too. They are the 5th largest organisation in terms of the industry in Ireland. They've been established for 32 years. And you've got to be saying to you, well, when I read it through, I went, well, they've got longevity on there. They've been around for a long time, usually a good point. However, well, good point, I must add to that, because then people would go, oh, I've been to them before, I will go to them again, or my friends have been there. Well, when we come on to more areas of detail about the study itself, customers who use the vet services to see the vet nurses, they are very price sensitive, and they're more than open to moving to rivals and then actually saying, well, we did go to them once upon a time, to PVS, but they're being undercut by a competitor down the road. I would rather go and use those. So it's just so that you have a a, picture in your mind as to what is going on in this sort of situation. The professionals who are involved in a vet industry, I don't know if you maybe know any veterinarians or sort of vet nurses on there, especially the vets themselves, the veterinarians. They go through a rigorous process of university, demanding exams, job training on there, all to become qualified and therefore should be compensated accordingly. Same thing with the nurses. They go through, again, the exam sort of processes, and these are critical people who are involved in providing a quality service. That is where people will choose to come to you over others. And you'll see in the pre-C materials, they say about, oh, they deal with cats and dogs and reptiles and all this sort of stuff. And I read it and went, is this ACCA just telling us, hang on a second, are we going to have to confirm just to students that these are different types of animals, whether you think they're a pet or not? And then it really sort of dawned on me it was a case of the wide range of all these different animals that could rock up at the vet practice, that these are specialists, that if they've got a turtle that comes along versus a cat, they've still got to actually manage the situation, look after the client on there, and help them get their pet back to fitness on there. So they've got to be really adaptable to what is going on. Now, in terms of the services provided, this is where in your exam, what I'd be thinking is, in the requirements that are set, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but this would be my sort of approach to help you out, is you've just got to be on your toes as to the different revenue streams. And the first thing to point out by all the bullet points is there are a lot of them, and hence why this actual market is very lucrative. And you've got the ones up at the top, like the annual vaccinations. That's the sort of recurring revenue on there, seeing the clients, and you can build a better rapport. Then you've got other areas like health conditions, diseases, surgical operations. And this is where you could link in and sort of ooze into your answer about skilled staff or advances in technology that could help. And there are other areas like guidance and advice on pet care. This is a service that is actually provided by the vet practice PVS. However, we're told actually in the pre-C materials that clients who go to vet superstores, you know how it is. If you've got pets yourself, you go in, you'll go buy some food, and you'll speak to the person behind the counter who will then, and in this case, provide advice, which they have no training on whatsoever. And the clients, the pet owners, will actually take it on board. And it is going on in Ireland on there. There are other varieties of revenue streams, and this is where, when it comes to your exam, you have to pick up on it and then relay it back to which area of the pre-C materials did it relate to. And then in terms of, well, how does that actually fit in terms of the business itself? So the time, the consultations that go on for it, how would it fit in? We're also talking about how lucrative each of these revenue streams are. Because, and again, this is quite key for your notes if you're taking them down, they're hinting at, we'll see it in a slide coming up, that plans for the vet practices are the most lucrative way to gain that recurring revenue, whether it be semi-annually, annually, monthly. That is what is going to be driving the sector moving forward on there. The average consultancy time is about 15 minutes. And then this is where, key thing for your notes, PVS, you'll see it in the technology points later on, don't do bookings on their online website. They have a website. They tell you what they do, but you can't book through them. You have to call up, and the hours that they're open are fixed, whereas the clients, the pet owners themselves, work weekends and evenings. I'm stealing my thunder a bit on here. Next, we actually have in terms of the market structure now. And the traditional approach, as I'm sure if any of you have been to a vet before, is you build relationships over time. It's usually sort of word of mouth, very personalized. But what is actually happening in Ireland is that there are larger organizations coming to the market, acquiring smaller ones, and using this as a sort of cost savings, economies of scale mechanism to say, well, they've already set up their practice. Why would I, that's a veterinary practice, why on earth would I go about and do it just myself? They've got the location, they've got the staff there already, and acquisition is the likely activity for the next 5 years. So straight away I'm there going, well, acquisition. I've got to get that down in my notes because they talk about the revenue increasing over the next 5 years. And by how they're going to go about the acquiring is we have 31% of market share of small businesses. These are companies with 10 or less employees. And the key bit for your notes in terms of Praecuro Vet Services is that they've acquired small businesses successfully in the last few years. So they're actually going through this process, even though they are not one of the largest in the market. We then have the multinational organizations that are in the sort of pet food divisions, and they're attracted to this industry for vets because of the high profits and the increasing revenues. So therefore, you've got to be saying to yourself, well, PVS have got to be taking advantage of this. However, when you have a look at the graphs and the diagrams, over the last 5 years, PVS's revenue has been steadily dropping on that. And these big organizations who are bigger than PVS bring their expertise, their resources, a massive competitive advantage in this oligopoly structure. Again, that would be from an economic point of view in your pedestal analysis on there. Increased competition, and we've got new entrants that are coming into the market. Key for you to note down on there, that sort of cumulated calculation of Gloas, Bellstone, and Huge, they are the 3 largest. And a tactic for your exam is you have to apply those names if you are asked about it in a requirement. Use the names, refer to the percentages, don't use the words it or don't use the word they on there. Refer to them directly and their position in the marketplace. They operate clinics on a national basis on there, and this is where you've got to be able to differentiate that Gloas, Bellstone, and Huge are the large multinational ones, whereas PVS is a nationwide one on there, and they have hundreds of smaller ones. So what does this all mean? It's going to affect the competition, the price, and the quality of the service. Here's a nice little breakdown table that we have on here, taken from the pre-seed notes. And this is just to hit home about the multinational organizations that you need to be specific about in your answers, because they are probably going to be referred to in the examination itself. Dennis and Good Health are in the same sort of bracket as PVS on there. And notice the 31%, those are the small businesses, less than 10 employees, which are the ones are likely to be actually acquired on there. The key bit at the bottom is the industry itself. Why are these big organizations coming into the market sector? Well, it employs 36,000 people and generates revenue currently. Interested. Things to go with that. I mean, you just never know. We could get another multinational organization entering the market completely out of the blue, maybe setting up a completely new structure. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but these are the things you've got to read between the lines, because we're told on here that in the next 5 years, we're going to see a 6.8% expected growth level increase in the revenue. It's been 3.5% in the last 5 years. However, if you were to look, and if you've got the pre-seen notes in front of you right now, that is where, if you look at that page 9, look at the last 5 years, the revenue of PVS has actually been going down over the last 5 years. So the industry has been going up and is expanding and has plenty of opportunities that you could talk about in your SWOT analysis. But this is where, could you see it as an opportunity that PVS, with the new structure in place, with the board of directors that you could refer to, are they going to turn it round? Are they going to say, right, we're looking at pet nutrition, diagnosis, treatment, care, plans in place. These are the new revenue streams that we should be taking advantage of at PVS to get us back on the straight and narrow. I touched on before revenue growth, healthcare plans. Please get it noted down. They've said that it's increasingly popular. Pets are living for longer. More complex treatments are then made more affordable. PVS has actually started a plan 2 years ago, but they've not actually implemented it effectively, and has actually led to cash flow and working capital problems if you look at page 8. So again, this is where you say to yourself, they just need to sort of restructure, looking at how they operate more effectively. And then that could be put into practice to help the business move forward. The attitudes in terms of pets, the clients themselves, they are willing to spend the money, the people who are the pet owners, but it's all based on price. It is a necessity for them to look after their pets, but they don't care if they've been to PVS 2 or 3 times, they will move to an alternative if it is a lower price. And speaking of prices, that is going to be affected by the level of costs. Well, the veterinarians and the vet nurses are the major high fixed costs that you need to be aware of and to have down in your notes. But then there are others such as the premises, admin, health and safety on there, storage, marketing. And this is where, again, we're not given, I must get into the realms now of saying, I can't predict what's coming up, but there are hints and sprinkles as to when we come on to the risk register later on. They refer to health and safety quite a lot. And you think to yourself, what if we got on the exam day a health and safety issue that could link into maybe a SWOT analysis as a massive threat on that? Again, costs being essential to maintain the quality of service, client satisfaction that we need to keep to a certain level. So it's definitely something you should be aware of in terms of the costing of how the business is going to operate. And they also touch on that a couple of the practices that PVS actually have are only operated by 1 or 2 veterinarians and vet nurses. So if they were to actually go off sick or not be able to fulfill their roles, then the clinic would be in major issues. This is the reason why, again, for your notes, a major point that you need to be crystal clear on, that PVS the last 5 years has been performing pretty badly on that. We'll see it in the graphs later on. There's been a changing factor in that, which is that 60% of new pet owners in Ireland in the last 5 years are aged 16 to 34. So this is where the customer dynamics have completely changed in the last 5 years. The new pet owners are willing to pay, they like their pets, but PVS hasn't taken advantage of it, and they are still probably focusing on the over 35s on that. Nothing against anyone over 35, obviously, as well. Why is this the case? Why are they losing customers on there? Clients are lazy. They want convenience. They want minimal transportation. They want evening and weekends to take their pets in at their leisure. However, key for your notes, this is critical for the operations, is that PVS's clinics are only open 8:30 in the morning to 5:30, Monday to Friday. And then any times around that, you've got the vets who do emergency cover on shifts. So then you've got to say, well, who is responsible for the of the actual vet practices themselves? And on PVS's board of directors, there is a chief finance officer who is responsible for the pricing on there, the consultancy fees that are charged. And they actually have an operations manager. There's a long process that they have to go through. And you think to yourself, it's such a long process. Are they actually getting the full message across about how pushed for time they are and how much of a stressful job it is? And this is where companies like PVS are really struggling with recruitment, retention. It's becoming ever more increasingly difficult. And there are 2 main factors for this: in more and more pets and fewer people are training. So supply is going down and demand is going up on there. So there's a massive shortage of veterinarians. We're not given any information about the salaries, packages is in place. Again, that would be something I'd note down as a potential curveball that could be thrown at you on the exam day. Why would someone not want to be a vet? Well, they've got long working hours. The dynamics of what the demand is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for the service. And there are 2 major factors of well-being for staff, which could link into your sort of pestle analysis from a social factor on there. 5% of staff actually have work-related stress, and the average staff turnover for the industry is 13%. Now, on page 9, later on in the pre-seen material notes, PVS's staff turnover rate is 19% for the current year on there. So social points on there, it linking back to client loyalty being completely low, and PVS's sales completely dipping down as well, even though the market has gone up. So something has to change in terms of their operations, the way they're structuring their fees, and this is where it's highly likely that something on those lines could come up in a requirement. We now have a look at the industry outlook in Ireland as a sort of overall, overall looking from above, shall we say. And there are other factors that are involved in this industry, competition, and channels of revenue that PVS are missing out on. I mentioned before about people giving general advice, and we have two superstores, Best for Pets and Pet Fair. Please remember those names. It's a classic exam style thing where get it written down on a card, piece of paper now. They will put it in a requirement, Pet Fair or Best for Pets or telehealth later on. And students who are prepared will know exactly like that, back straight to the industry outlook. They know where it is. Someone who isn't prepared will be faffing around, going through the pre-seen notes on the exam day and going, where on earth is this one word? And I can tell you now, Best for Pets and Pet Fair come up once, and it is in that line there as a large superstore. We also have online medication, and we also have telehealth on there. So cheaper options in terms of the technology and communication. They have online orders of prescriptions on there. And key thing for the telehealth one about the online competitor, not mentioned anywhere else, so again, get that name down on there, is they offer advice 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And this is another service that is not offered by PVS on there. Last but not least, we have a large carbon footprint for the industry itself. We have waste, we have resource consumption, usage on there, all possible unseen topic areas linking to the environmental factors of pestle. And then they also have the human and vet related ESG issues about the industry itself facing negative publicity. And again, the alarms were ringing in my head when I read through this. I'm thinking to myself, what if in the unseen information on the exam day, we had some press release that PVS was involved in some sort of scam or lawsuit on there? And this is going to negatively impact on the business moving forward and could potentially be acquired. Who knows? But it's just to give you a little flavour on there. In terms of innovation and developments now, we have technology points relating again to pestle and SWOT. You've got to be aware and have a look on page 7 if you've got the pre-seen notes in front of you about PVS's approach to technology. They have a off-the-shelf kind of setup. There is no artificial intelligence, machine learning put into play with their technology use. And the other thing that they have to contend with is that it's very capital intensive. You need high levels of investment and it's expensive to deliver. So you've got all these massive multinational companies who come along with all their resources and go, well, we can invest in that and that's going to make us better. And that is what is happening in this sort of case scenario. There is no board member, worth noting down, for PVS that actually focuses on technology in their role. So who's accountable for it? Are we all just going to sort of sit around a table and go, oh, is it me? Me? No, you? No. Oh, who knows on there? Again, could be a recommendation or a point you could refer to. They're well behind on the technology. We also have the statement that we've been told in the pre-seen materials from a digital technology point of view. GLOAS, Bellstone and Hughes, the 3 largest multinational organizations, are implementing it in their operations, and telehealth is providing increased flexibility and convenience for their clients. All sources of competition, the online option, a bit cheaper, and quite a lot of things that are not going to PVS's advantage, shall we say. Next, we come on to the industry outlook in Ireland, the industry bodies, regulation, legislation, again, other areas of pestle that could be linked in from a legal side. We are told about the ability to practice, so being part of the Chartered College of Vet Professionals. That's what the vets must be registered with. And then we also have the SPP on there, which PVS is actually a member of on there. So that's the core level accreditation for the Standards of Pets program. But they also say, well, the majority of them all actually have it anyway. The key bit for your notes is that 5% hold the higher level. We are not told if PVS holds that higher level. We are not told which of the competitors hold that higher level. Again, if they're going to show it to us, then it could be on the unseen information on the day, or you could refer to it in one of your points to link back to the scenario. We've got vets and nurses, part of a union on here. And again, it's just one of those sort of red flags that stand out to me to say, we've got a 19% staff turnover. We've got unions being mentioned on here. Could there be an issue that there's some sort of uproar or something that's gone wrong on the unseen information? Again, definitely something I would have on a flashcard to be aware of and to refer to maybe having to negotiate with the Ireland Vet Union if there was an issue with their members. The service industry itself, there are areas in terms of compliance. This is where that health and safety point comes in to protect staff, the general public on there. And it links into the staff and client satisfaction, which has been decreasing the last 4 to 5 years. So you just think to yourself, I mean, what could go wrong on there? Health and safety factors, lawsuits, anything on those lines that could involve a client. There are also prescription issues, emergency services with provisions in place. Emergency cover is on an out of hours and rotational basis done by the vets. So when I read it through, I went, oh my word, imagine you were an employed vet for PVS. You're working full time, Monday to Friday. Then you're also working potentially weekends and evenings on top of it. You've got 5% of the vets actually having mental health issues. You've got 19% staff turnover, and there are some practices where there's only 1 or 2 vets who are in charge of the operations, which we'll come on to later on. So it's not looking very rosy-nosy for them, which is where I sort of get the sense of there being a sort of health and safety accident, something going on there. They're the 5th largest pet organisation in Ireland, as we talked about, 6% market share. That comes back to the background. But in terms of PVS's actual size, 168 clinics. It's not small. But the other key thing to note is that as I went through the notes on here, they're all in the south of Ireland. So why are they not actually going to the north? We're not given any information about are the northern part of Ireland more profitable on there, or the staffing issues potentially are for it. Again, no indication if the board of directors are based there or in charge of these areas. Could be another factor that could come up on the unseen information. Another factor that really hit me when I was reading it through, just to get some perspective, is the amount of staff they've got. 2,490, 860 vets, 925 vet nurses, and 705 support staff. So you have to ask, why are PVS losing money when they're set up like the others? Because we were told that the support staff is broadly in line with the industry averages. So they're all set up the same. They're just not operating the same and effectively. But the final note is we've got the 31st of March is the same financial year end as that projected revenue. So it's all aligned. There's going to be no issue with sort of apportioning or anything on those lines to note. Next, we're talking about the strategic position. 85% of PVS's clinics are in town centres, which is really good. So that's popular, location, convenience. So there must be something wrong with the pricing because the majority of them are all located in good areas. In terms of the prices, that's where the finance director is the person in charge of that. But it looks like PVS are being undercut by the clients in a very price-sensitive marketplace. We've had the change to a younger client base, as we said, but in terms of innovation and quality of service, we've got not included in the service list the innovation sort of factors. So PVS on here, they've said they do therapy for pets. Nothing against therapy or for pets or anything on those lines, but therapy for pets and acupuncture, pain relief for pets. None of these were mentioned in the revenue streams on the first few pages. Granted, they've won numerous awards, but if they're providing a service which is limited or not really there, then is it worth doing? Should you just stick to what the market is actually demanding on there? Um, PVS has historically had an excellent reputation, quality, knowledgeable, happy staff. Um, However, you've got staff turnover of 19% on there. Something has gone wrong, and this is a key phrase for you to get down, or key line, should I say, is that they've won awards. PBS has won awards 11 times, but in the last 6 years, they haven't at all. So, and this is one of the other reasons something has gone wrong in the last few years and has resulted in poor performance on there. They're not keeping up with changes demanded by the actual marketplace, as you can see on there. And you get the impression that they just want the procedure done from the client's perspective. If they get a better price somewhere else, they're more than happy to go there, and they will not show loyalty to PVS, even if they've been a previous customer. If they can get it cheaper elsewhere, they will go there. In terms of the ownership of Praecuro Vet Services, we have Pitier on here, retired recently, and still owns 11.11%. And this is where you need to get the ownership structure into your head and on your notes, that we've got 8 directors, all with 11.11% on there, with Pitier with another 11.11%. We also have a potential for new CEO to possibly change these things around, because they've recently appointed a chief executive officer, so new ideas coming to the table. And the final thing to note is PVS is unlisted and is all equity finance. I'm thinking there, well, if they said equity finance, you got to say, well, okay, are we looking at maybe some debt being brought into the business? What about the capital structure? And it's not listed, so it has not been offered to the public. So you think to yourself, well, are they planning on doing that in the future? Again, could be something that could come up on the exam day. This is the structure on here, and linking to that unlisted company point, because they are not listed and not on a stock exchange, they don't have to fulfill the criteria of having the same number of non-executive directors to executive directors. They only actually have one NED, non-executive director. So if it was listed, what would they have to go through, the changes on there? Who knows? They may be looking to expand, or they may have a massive capital injection to try and be one of the big players in the industry. Just thought it's worth noting down on that. Now, in terms of possible area in the exam that they may decide to become listed on there, there are also other risks involved where it comes across that directors really just want control over what is sort of going on, and they don't have an audit committee, they don't have a nomination committee, they don't have a remuneration committee on there. And coming to some perspective, this is a 160. There is an internal audit function, internal controls that are leading to potential risks. Are there lots of things slipping through the net and it's negatively impacted on the business itself? The COO, or Chief Operating Officer, is another really good point to note down, in the way that the COO, I don't like saying the COO on there, the Chief Operating Officer receives their information and to get the full picture. Whereas if I just read this through to you on here, okay, so the Chief Operating Officer has the responsibility for the day-to-day operation. As you would expect, they're probably on a massive salary, goes with the territory. But in order to get the information, clinics are managed by clinical managers, up to 10 of them. They report to the senior veterinarians, who are already super busy, who then provide it to district managers, who then go back to the Chief Operating Officer. So it's like pass the parcel and Chinese whispers with going from one person to another. Are they actually going to get the final message? And then the balance. This is where the agency theory comes into it. They don't want to upset different parties, one being shareholders, and then the agents who operate the practices on a day-to-day basis, the vets themselves. And that is the long process, so you can visually see it, of clinical managers to the senior veterinarians. We're not told how many actually go through the process, then to the 5 district managers. And you just got to think, could that be a lot better? Of course it could. that they just need to work out a better process, and you could refer to that in your answer, assuming it relates to the actual requirement, that is. Right. The board and organizational structure. Internal audit functions on here. Really, exam technique for this is the directors have control. It feels like there is a disconnect between the board and what's going on the ground. And what I'd be saying to myself when I'm reading the requirements is one of the first questions is this requirement, which director does it relate to? I've got to be specific to their actual roles and then linking it back to what decisions have been made. And the other final thing was there are 5 district managers. 5 district managers for 168 clinics. Is that enough? Do we have, and utilizing their words of efficiency and effectiveness on there, or efficiently and effectively, those are sort of the key buzzwords I'd be looking to apply in my answer, especially if it's something to do with the directors and the role they are playing. Information systems and use of technology now, very prominent on here. There are lots of areas, as you can see from the notes, that short and sweet, PVS actually has a standard package. They've used it for 8 years. It's not very bespoke. It's not been updated. You can see the writing on the wall here. Why so basic? Why no updates? No online booking, okay? Then we have limited information on PVS, links to its actual missions and values. So what we're getting on there is they say that they want to put the clients at the forefront. They are the best thing since sliced bread. Well, all these sort of areas of the business that are supposed to be fantastic link to the business development director. That is the person who is held accountable, and it links to the loss of sales, customer retention on there, all areas that you need to be on your toes for to apply if it got tested. Then we have, in terms of the emails and how the staff actually communicate, they don't really have any social media presence. There is no facility for clients to actually communicate with the clinics via email, and goes against their vision on page 10. There is a private network for staff internally, but it doesn't sound like a very efficient system. And PVS is yet to make any major investments in technological advances in pet care. Straight away, competitive advantage to rivals. You've got the pestle factors in there for the theory. No operations director in terms of the responsibility. Who is held accountable for these things? Is it the district managers, the senior vet? They've already got a load on. And then another possible area is to keep up with these large multinational organizations. Cash-wise, capital expenditure, these are other things that you've got to say, well, it's not looking good, but what are we going to do about it and how are we going to finance it? Services-wise now, in terms of the processes and retaining customers, as we said, we've got 168 clinics on there, different sizes, but what the client of innovation on there, and over the past years, they've not really offered any new services. Good points to note down here and refer back to in the answer when applying to the scenario is the stress levels of the vets. The clinics are only open on those fixed times, and on the rotational basis, it's the vets who are actually going to be held accountable to fit the bill on there to meet the demands. The clients, the pet owners, want evenings and weekends. We've touched on it before, and that's having a negative impact on 5% of staff in the industry being off work for stress-related and problematic areas for it. Plan-wise, we've got that. This is where we touched on earlier that they've already set up a plan. However, these are relating to other issues that, yes, they'll put you on a plan to incentivize you to be on a plan, but they will allow you to delay the payment of expensive treatments. So in layman's terms, to keep them retained within the practice, they'll put them on a plan, they'll delay the treatment payments, but what's happening now is the vets doing the treatment, they're paying all the upfront costs, the resources, and they're not getting paid. Or to be paid, shall we say. Business development director, again, linked at the bottom in terms of competition. So we've got the town centre locations and word of mouth recommendations on here. But new clients are down from 11,000 to 7,000. So that is the business development manager or director's responsibility. Marketing activities have been limited. And again, you've got to be looking at that to be putting it in your SWOT analysis. That they've got advertisements, local newspapers, and potential posters on there. Suppliers wise, we have the Ireland Vet Supplies. Again, another name for you to note down to refer to in case it came up at a requirement. It looks like on there that they've actually had a good relationship, which is very pleasing. But then I always think, well, what if that was not to carry on? Because we're given good bulk discounts on there. Could something happen that we actually upset one of our suppliers? Just worth noting that this is actually one of the positive things for PVS in the case study on here. We've got another name on here for GLOAS Group on there. So pet foods and accessories are sourced from a number of suppliers. And this is where which they own a number of brands and are purchased directly by the clinics for it. In terms of risks, I touched on it before. There are some on here where you just go, they could definitely refer to it on there. The risk register and the risk management, there isn't much in terms of, well, what are we going to do about it? First of all, we do have the internal audit function, but in terms of the CFO's responsibility for being in charge of those risks, we don't have much in relation to, well, what are we going to do if it actually happens? In terms of what do I think is an area that I would be particularly paying good attention to, we have health and safety again, falling under the HR director. And they touched on it before as to bad press, potential lawsuits, legislation involved, could link into pestle with the theory. Could come up in the unseen information. Can't guarantee it, but it's definitely something I would be having going through my mind. And that links into the adverse publicity. We're not really given much in terms of the press sort of situation. Kind of the sort of thing that you may be seeing in some of the mock exams that you go, it'd be quite good to put in some sort of publicity newspaper article and then link it back to PVS for something that they'd actually done right or done wrong. We're coming on to the financial information now, a sort of selected summary. So these are actually provided to you in the pre-seed materials. From 2002 to 2003, so this is looking from right to left on your screen, we have a 5.71 decrease. So you could have used that figure in your exam. The calculations are up at the top. And this is where it comes down to a lack of moving with the times. We've got the new generation of younger pet owners on there. Revenue's been going down. But the key thing here, which reading between the lines, yes, it's bad that revenue's been going down, but we don't know from that 165 million how profitable it is or how loss-making it is. Again, could be something to come up, but just take it with a pinch of salt and say, I think there's a bit more meat on the bone to go with that one. The satisfaction-wise, I mean, that one just does what it says on the tin for this one as to, we've talked about the absences from work and the industry average of 13% on there in terms of the staff turnover. And then in terms of the satisfaction to link into that, it's only been going one way. It's been going down. But the worrying thing as well is from a client perspective, yes, granted, they are money driven in terms of the services they want, but the satisfaction from the service that they're getting is also dropping as well. Coming on to the staff turnover rate now, again, going from right to left, it looks good. We're going up. Sadly not. That is very bad. We want staff turnover to be as low as possible. It doesn't, and this is the key bit for some SBL key examiner wowing knowledge, is that it doesn't align with the company's vision and strategic objectives on page 10 in the pre-seed notes. Worth noting as well that the average staff turnover is 13% and it's currently at 19, which is really, really bad. So it needs to go lower. New client-wise, we touched on it on the previous slide. So in the recent years, it's gone down from 11,000 to 7,000. Still 7,000 new clients, but the way that we're told from the case, clients are shifting from place to place to place, and maybe PVS has had some discounts and they've jumped on it and paid for it on that. The clients like small fees on there, but again, we don't know what is it in terms of the profitability on here. Are these 7,000 new clients, high-paying clients that have had massive operations on their pets. And PVS has 2,490 staff on there. So dealing with these new clients of 7,000. What we're not given here is the total number of clients. Again, something that we could be given on the exam day itself. New clients on here that we have from the financial information. Very bad, does not align with the vision as well. Linking into the financial information. This is, again, it's the same one on here, going from 11,000 down to 7, just to highlight again the drop in numbers, but linking to those vision and strategic objectives we'll come on to. You've heard me talk about pestle analysis and trying to get in it as much as possible on there. These are some of the sort of factors in terms of pestle. We've got regulation, market competition, client expectations, and treatment of staff. Just to give you a flavour of some potential areas, along with some other theories at the bottom, Porter's value chain and diamonds, which do have some flavours that could be applied from the preceding materials. Porter's 5 forces has a few more areas that could be relating to, because we're given information about suppliers and buyers on there, and in particular competitive rivalry. You could talk about growth, price sensitivity, different options, multinational companies, entry into the market. Again, a theory going away from today I would definitely make sure you are comfortable with. SWOT analysis does what it says on the tin. We've talked about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats throughout today's session. And coming on to, before we have our Q&A now, this is an area you've got to be spot on with, and for your notes, refer directly to the wording that they have included in the preceding information. So there, for what I've talked about today in today's webinar, our mission to ensure our patients have a long and happy lives. Well, we could have more information about the survival rate of the pets on there, but the worrying one is our vision, to be the vet organisation of choice. Well, with high staff turnover and lowering inquiries from new people wanting to come to the vet practice, that vision just is not true on there. And it's the same with some of the strategic objectives. Give our clients what they want. Well, no, that isn't, in terms of pet therapy and acupuncture, I don't think there's a big demand for that there. Retain our staff so that they deliver the best service. 19% staff turnover on there, and staff satisfaction dropping. Definitely, can you see how they're linking into different areas of the preceding materials now? Be leaders in the vet care and client service. Well, market share, we're only the 5th largest. We're not taking on technology in our business. Service is actually dropping down there. So we are miles behind the competitors in more than one area, worth noting down, and delivering profit via differentiation. We're told about the revenues going up, but we're not actually told about how profitable we are. So again, another sort of amber flag as to could potentially come up on there. And last but not least, we have the values and opportunities on here. Quality and care, first class, innovative service. Is that really true on there? Again, refer directly to these values in your answer, that if the point you're making does not align to these values, tell the marker on there. Refer to the specific figures, and I've even put red flag that could come up that could link into a health and safety issue. We are transparent, open, and stand up for what we believe is right. So could actually refer to and quote that directly. In terms of satisfaction scores for careers at PVS on here, not to put anyone off who wants to go and work for them, 60 out of 100. No information on salaries or these sort of discounts. They say that they've got flexible working, but the open hours are pretty fixed on there. And if you're a veterinarian, then goodbye to your social life.